10 days away from camp, the 10 biggest questions for the Houston Texans. DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to be playing for the old Oilers. Let's make sense of it all in the locker room.
Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city.
Welcome to the locker room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 610 and the Odyssey app. 10 days away from camp. 10 questions, the 10 most important questions about this year's version of the Houston Texans. Subscribe, like, right along. Started this before last season. Been going pretty strong. And we are there. We're going to be on the field, going to be interviewing players after each practice, multiple players, going to have some players on the stream. We're at every single game. We interview players during the week. So this is the best place that you can come to if you want Houston Texans coverage. Let's start with the 10th biggest question for the Houston Texans. And you can get the comments in. We'll get to them if they're topical. We'll get to them in the flow. If they're eyebrow raisers, we'll get to them at the end of the show. We are live right now. We like to go live usually nightly during the season. We drop videos throughout the week. Haven't taken any time off during the off season really. So the videos keep coming. The daily content keeps coming. Question number 10 for the Houston Texans. How does Davis Mills look compared to CJ Stroud? Now, I don't think this is the most important question when it comes to CJ Stroud's status as quarterback of the Houston Texans, but I think it is something that we're going to talk about, and it's going to be something that we're going to look at, because this isn't, I hear the Tom Savage comparison, and I hear, the experience question and comments with Davis Mills. But the thing about Davis Mills is he's learning a new system too. And Davis Mills was a guy that they tried to move on from by bringing in CJ Stroud. So regardless of whether you think it's a legitimate competition or not, you might dismiss that storyline and say, okay, this isn't a real quarterback competition, which you could be right about, but it is relevant to see how CJ Stroud looks compared to Davis Mills. And maybe Davis Mills looks a little bit better early on. Who knows? But this is something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, because in a perfect world, you would hope that the quarterback you take number 2 overall immediately looks like a upgrade over the quarterback that you clearly wanted to move on from. And I've seen some stuff on Twitter about, CJ Stroud, does he have enough around him to succeed? I actually think Anthony Richardson's probably in a better situation when it comes to the 3 C's, as I've mentioned 100 times on here. Coaching, cast. I think CJ Stroud he's more capable. That's the 3rd C. But people do bring up interesting points. If you're going to say that, CJ Stroud doesn't have enough around him, what does that say about Davis Mills last year? Which I don't think you need to separate the two. I think that's just more of an argumentative way of looking at it. It's clear Davis Mills is not a franchise quarterback. He was a 3rd round pick. If he ends up being a good backup, then that validates the 3rd round pick. But it will be interesting to see how Davis Mills looks compared to CJ Stroud. Cebu says Davis, keep the comments coming. Cebu says Davis wouldn't start for any other team in the league, but he can be a fine backup. Correct. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can last in the league for a long time as a backup. And quite frankly, Davis Mills was a 3rd round pick. He got thrown to the Wolves probably a little earlier than you would like because of the Deshaun Watson situation. He had some early success, so maybe expectations got a little bit crazy, but there's nothing wrong with Davis Mills. Davis Mills could still end up being a pretty valuable asset to this squad. And I think he'll probably end up being the backup quarterback. Joe Blue says he doesn't get the Mills hate. The dude is a backup. Exactly. I think I just explained it, though. I think it was more so just about the situation he came into, and maybe expectations got a little bit wild. Appreciate the comments. Keep them coming. Again, subscribe, like, right along. That's question 10. How does Davis Mills look compared to CJ Stroud? We're 10 days away from training camp. Question number 9 here in the locker room. Where are the best quotes coming from? And this is going to be fun because here's how it works when I'm out there at camp on Sports Radio 610 and on the Odyssey app. As soon as practice is over, players go to the podium. Now, we're going to be set up to where we're going to get to talk to one or two of those players live on the air, and we're going to have exclusive interviews with them. And our strategy and my strategy, and we bring the content here as well, and I'm going to have guys on the stream as well. I've already talked about that type of things. The strategy for me is they're going to go to the podium and people are going to ask them, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, they're going to ask the generic questions, the questions that need to be asked, the football questions. Our goal is going to be to put in the homework and ask questions that maybe you wouldn't get at the podium. And we did a good job. The Davis Mills last year talking about the draft neck, Brandon Cooks talking about buying in. That didn't travel too well with time, but that's going to be the goal, and we're going to bring the content here. I wonder who's going to provide the best quotes of camp, and there's always someone who does. Now, is this going to be a buttoned-up squad, or are we going to get how is DeMeco going to handle his team? We've already seen them kind of prolong or delay CJ Stroud going to the podium. Is CJ going to go up there and say something? Is Tank Dell going to go up there and say something? Are we going to have someone go up there and guarantee that they're going to be in the playoffs? Who knows? But there will be some quotes. There's always quotes at camp that go viral. And as podium critic and someone who's going to be interviewing these players and bringing the content to you, not just on the Odyssey app and Sports Radio 610, I wonder who's going to bring the best quotes. And that doesn't mean they're going to come out and say, we're going to win the Super Bowl, right? It means like something funny. Like, remember when Philip Lindsay said, everybody thinks we're the scum bucket and we're not the scum bucket? We thought it was funny at the time. Now, he ended up being kind of a scum bucket running back. Wasn't good. Nice guy. But he ended up not being good. But like quotes like that type of stuff. JJ Stagg thinks it's going to be Petrie as the most mic'd up player. I would rather mic up Jimmy Ward. I think Petrie's going to be one of the voices. I'm actually calling Petrie as a captain. I could see that being kind of a surprise. I could see them making Jalen Petrie a captain. I know they have a few. He just seems to be one of the guys. But as far as like entertaining mic'd up stuff, Jimmy Ward is the guy. Dameon Pierce is another candidate. Dameon Pierce, he's a funny dude, country as hell. He likes to hear. Cebu says, I'd actually like to hear more from Nico. I don't feel like we know him well. We've interviewed him twice, man. We've had some really good interviews. If you go back, we've had him on the show 2 or 3 times. Kind of a quiet guy, real solid young man. He's from Alabama, went to Michigan, turned down Nick Saban. But I mean, as far as like interviewing, Nico's not quite that entertaining. Tyler says, I cannot wait to hear how CJ reacts when you tell him you were a Bryce guy. It will be really telling his maturity. He knows. I mean, it's all good. He knows. I was a Bryce guy. You all know that. Still am. So that's question number 9. Where are the best quotes coming from live here in the locker room? So to reset, how does Davis Mills look compared to CJ Stroud? Not the end all be all. Where are the best quotes coming from? Question number 8. How does the wide receiver depth shape up? This is going to be really interesting because you have a lot of guys that can play in the slot. You have Mechie, you have Tank Dell. We haven't seen either one of those guys in an NFL offense. You have Noah Brown, who can line up in the slot, can kind of move around, better blocker. You have Nico, who you think is going to line up outside. You have Xavier Hutchinson, who a lot of people seem to be pretty high on. And you have Robert Woods, who's kind of the guy who knows the system. I think it's interesting. Robert Woods' receptions last year would have been tied for the most by a receiver the last 3 years, not named Brandon Cooks, for his average, as people think that he is. You got Amari Rodgers, who some people are saying don't sleep on. I don't know how he fits into things, but the wide receiver depth is interesting. And you also have a situation where I could see them bringing in another wide receiver in camp, depending on how stuff goes on. It'll be really, really interesting to see. Adrian's asking about a trade. Maybe. Do I think he's going to trade for a big name? No. But I could easily see them bringing in a wide receiver. But the wide receiver depth could go a lot of ways. I think there's a number of scenarios that we could see, and that's going to be one of the most intriguing things. NF asks, if Mechie is healthy, I would imagine he would be lined up outside based on the wide receivers we have. I mean, I think they're going to move the guys around a lot. I think ideally they look at Mechie as a slot guy, but you can have multiple slots. So that'll be something interesting to look at as far as how they figure that out. Nico and Hutch are a solid 1-2 punch on the outside. I really think Nico's going to surprise you. I hope so. I think Nico's a fine player. I don't think he's destined to be a number 1 or number 2 receiver, but we will see. It will be interesting to see how he blocks too. And I know that sounds corny for a wide receiver, but you are going to have to block, and that's one of Noah Brown's strengths. Tyler talking about the young guys are press heavy. The veterans like Rodgers could be out. Probably unrealistic, but I'm high on the young guys. Yeah, we'll see what happens with the young guys. If you're a Bryce guy, go to California then. If you're a real Texans fan, you rock and roll with who you picked. Hey, dum-dum. CJ's from California too. God. Are you saying go to Carolina? I got to go to Carolina now. I see I'm the dum-dum. But no, I don't have to go anywhere. I'm right here. But if I was a Bryce guy before, I'm going to stick with being a Bryce guy. I hope I'm wrong about CJ. He's very interesting. And I cover the squad. I don't have to pick who I don't have to roll with anything. I mean, I'm rolling with CJ. I'm rooting for him. He's easy to root for, but yeah, that's my guy. My bad on the California thing. Adrian says, if we go 9-8, do you think this team would be more attractive to players like Devontae Adams if he's not happy in Vegas? I think this team already is more attractive. The quality of free agent that you've seen, now a lot of that has to do with not having $75 million in dead cap. But yeah, I think it's already more attractive. And who knows what happens in year 1. I think players want to play for DeMeco. With wide receivers like Devontae, I think typically it's about bread. That seems to be the theme of wide receivers. Running backs struggle to get bread. Wide receivers just find ways to get bread, except DeAndre didn't get quite as much as I think he thought he would. We'll get into the DeAndre thing a little bit later, but we'll see. KI says, I've always viewed Nico as T. Higgins-esque. That would be great. If you view him like that, then you should expect a little bit more than 170-yard game in 2 seasons. I don't think they're alike at all. I think Higgins is a lot more physical. I think Nico is kind of right now, he just looks like kind of a deep threat. I don't think he has the intermediate game that Higgins has either. But yeah, if that's how you view him, then you should expect really big things from him. If you think he's like Higgins. So the wide receiver depth, question 8. Question number 7. So we've talked about Mills. We've talked about the best quotes. We've talked about how the wide receiver depth shapes up. We've talked about the Nico Collins hope. Number 7, New beginning or beginning of the end for third-year guys. I think this is interesting. Last year we were talking about at this time, the previous rookie class, and we were talking about how, man, these guys overachieved. You feel good about how Roy Lopez played. You had high hopes for Nico. Davis Mills had performed at a higher level than most of the rookies in the class. You wondered what was going to happen with Garrett Wallow, Brevin Jordan. Man, he looked more in shape. And here we are. And really, every single one of those guys had poor sophomore seasons, for lack of a better term, second-year seasons. Mills came a little bit down to earth. Nico, what did he really do? Brevin Jordan was inactive. He was a healthy scratch multiple times. Although I saw he was working out with Dalton Schultz, and he's been mentioned a couple times by CJ, so maybe this system fits him. Roy Lopez got thrown around a little bit on the interior. The run defense was really poor, and you really didn't get much from those guys. So is this going to be a new beginning for some of these guys, or is this going to kind of be the beginning of the end? Are they going to start to get phased out by other guys? I think Roy Lopez is definitely playing for a spot on this roster. I think that Davis Mills, I think he's probably safe as the backup. Nico, I could see things going either way with Nico. I know some people are high on Nico. I think this could go either way when it comes to Nico Collins and how he ends up looking. And Brevin Jordan, he's definitely I think he's on the outside looking in, but the way they talk about him, they seem to have decent hopes for him. But it's just interesting how we look at this class this year compared to last year. When we had high hopes, I could see a situation where most of those guys aren't even on the team at the start of the year, but you never know. We'll see how they bounce back. Question 6, 10 days away from camp. Will this year's second-year guys do what last year's didn't, which is progress? It's kind of funny because we talked about how good most of the picks with the limited assets were in their first year, and how they kind of fell off their second year. You could say, with the exception of Petrie and Dameon Pierce, that the rookie class last year was somewhat disappointing. Derek Stingley, not all his fault, but he did not have nearly as good of a rookie year as Sauce Gardner did, who was selected after him. The new system should help. More talent around him should help. I don't think he was like as injured as maybe the back of the football card will show. I think if they'd been competing, that he probably wouldn't have missed as many spots. But I want to see if this year's second-year guys can do what last year's didn't. We also had Christian Harris. He showed some signs, but wasn't completely healthy. Maybe DeMeco cranks him up a notch. But between Stingley, the very disappointing season of Kenyon Green, Christian Harris, you feel good about this rookie class. You're not sitting here saying they overachieved, but it does feel like the ceiling is a lot higher for these guys. So can they do what last year's guys didn't? I think there's a lot of reason for optimism here, and I think these guys could end up being staples for a really, really good defense. Stingley, Petrie was fine last year. I think he's I've asked the question, like, can someone get called underrated so much that they're eventually overrated? Like, I love Jalen Petrie. I think he's great. I think 6 years from now, if you told me to bet on who's going to be here and who's going to be one of the leaders of this team and one of the staples of this community, I would bet on Jalen Petrie, and I don't even think there would be a close second. But damn, how many people are going to say a guy's underrated before you start to say, well, maybe he's not underrated, So we'll see what happens. But the second-year guys, can they do what last year's rookie class didn't, which is progress? And if so, the ceiling is so much higher. We're talking about 2 first-round picks. Didn't even have a first-round pick the year before. I think it'll be a key to success in the short and long term. K Mo, first time caller, long time listener. Love that first time, long time. What expectations do you have for Christian Harris and the linebackers this year? Seemed like the weak link on D last year. I'll hang up and listen. I was a big Christian Harris guy last year. So Christian Harris was actually my favorite rookie last year. I didn't think he was going to be the best, but I just think that freakish athleticism and a guy who never played linebacker until he went to Alabama was actually like a corner, tight end / running back in Louisiana before he went there. I think that freakish athleticism you can't really teach. And when Nick Saban trusts you to start basically every game of your college career at a position that you never played, I think that kind of speaks for itself. I keep hearing people talk about like the Fred Warner comparison. I think that's kind of unfair to even put that on him, just because I know that there's similarities and people will list it. And anytime a coach comes over from a team you want to like compare, I think that's getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. But I think if Christian Harris is healthy, I think Christian Harris, I think you can be looking at 120, 130 tackle guy, just because of the way he runs and just because of the way that DeMeco develops linebackers. I also think he's underrated in coverage. I know John Harris. I was talking to John Harris. Sometimes the angles are a little bit rough, but at Alabama, sometimes you can get away with that. That the fundamentals is something that DeMeco is going to get with him. But I have high hopes for Christian Harris. I mean, Christian Harris you can pencil him in as a starter. And I think DeMeco is going to do good things for him. So I expect a lot from him. I'm not going to throw out the Fred Warner comparison, though. JJ Stagg, I don't know why the Texans social media always includes Brevin. He's probably gone. CJ included him, man. CJ said his name. And Dalton Schultz tagged him today. So I get it if it were the Texans, but it's the actual team that's doing him. I'll get to some of these questions a little bit later on. Joe Blue says Sting is built different this year. I think he likes the challenge of Sauce. Stingley's a baller, man. So Derek Stingley, if you look at Derek Stingley now, he's definitely been in the weight room. But he's always he's just like a football player. Like I remember going into the press conference, and if you listen to the show, you've probably heard this before. But when I went into the DeMeco Ryans press conference, it was interesting because there was a lot of hype leading to it. And, you had like the whole like shrine of DeMeco Ryans, the life and stuff. And you had all this hype and you had the cap shirts and all that. And it was cool. But I wanted to like approach it after, you walk down the hall and you see all that stuff. And then when you walk in the press room, there's former players on the side when you first walk in. And then when you walk to the other side, that's where media is set. And I walked in with Figgy and I did the show with Wade Smith, Texans Pro Bowler Wade Smith, former Texans Pro Bowler Wade Smith. And he told me, he's like, "You're the podium critic. I'm really happy for you today." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Just trust me. You'll see. Like when it happens, you'll see." And I was like, "All right." So when I walked in there, I kind of just like took a breath and I was like, I know this is nerdy as shit, but this is just kind of how I approached it. And I decided that the whole side of the room where all the former players were and all that and all the hype, I was just going to block that out. And I was just going to watch this DeMeco Ryans press conference as if, it's a normal coach and he never played for the Texans. And how, if just they had hired someone else and he came in here, how would I look at this press conference? So I was trying to like separate all of that just so I could like look at it in two ways, because let's be honest, with all that hype, DeMeco Ryans could have gone up there. I'm not saying he could have sounded like as stupid as like David Culley going up there. The most important thing about football is the football. And if we go 3 and out, we're good. But he could have really just farted into a microphone and most people because of what the Texans had been through and because you wanted something to feel good about, you would have felt good about the press conference. So I tried to like separate that, and I basically just like zoned out the right side of my vision, because that's where the 50 teammates were. That's where all the hype was and all that. So I just sat on the left side, just watched this DeMeco Ryans press conference. And I'll tell you, man, like it would have been an A+ press conference, even without all the hype and the hoopla. And I'm bringing this back to the Derek Stingley situation because there were some current players that were there. And a lot of them were there and, they were just like showing up. And you could tell it was kind of like, hey, I'm here for coach and stuff. And that's good. That's good. But they were just basically there. And it was like, hey, I'm here, what do I like sit down and watch and all this type of stuff. But if you watched, Derek Stingley walked in, and if you looked at Derek Stingley during that press conference, because I remember looking over to my right, and he was like in the seat in front of me, like he was in the row in front, but he was down there. If you looked at Derek Stingley, that whole press conference, he was sitting like this. He was just sitting there like staring at DeMeco Ryans. Like he was almost like, he looked like a nerd in honors math class that sits in the front row and is like looking at the professor the whole time. He was just sitting there, and he just had the eye of a tiger. Like he looked like he wanted to play like that second. And as soon as DeMeco Ryans like mentioned him, his face didn't even change. He's just sitting there like all intensely. So I think Derek Stingley, he's built different, period. I mean, you're talking about a freak. You're talking about one of the best seasons, one of the best seasons in the history of LSU football. You're talking about a guy who's been training to do this his whole life with his pops. You're talking about a guy that has all the talent. He's just got to stay healthy, and he's got to be used correctly. And that's the thing that I thought was interesting about drafting Derek Stingley last year, is that he didn't fit Lovie Smith's system. And they didn't draft players for Lovie Smith's system because they knew that Lovie Smith's system was dated. Now, I thought Lovie Smith would have changed it up a little bit for Derek Stingley. He didn't do that. He's stuck in the Stone Age. And Lovie was a good coach for last year. But moving forward, Robert Saleh did it for Sauce Gardner. You also saw Quinnen Williams. Quinnen Williams had some question marks before Saleh got there, and Saleh cranked it up a notch and made him the highest paid, helped to make him the highest paid defensive lineman in football. And Sauce thrived there. DeMeco and Saleh tight. One of his mentors, same type of thing. You hope he can have that type of impact with Stingley, but Stingley seems effing ready to go. It's just going to be a matter of health. I don't think anything will piss me off more this season than Kirko taking away snaps from younger LBs. Can anyone tell me why he's still on the team? No idea. I don't know what the deal is with Kirko. Maybe they like his leadership here. I do think we do got to at least see how To'o looks. Henry To'o. Now, Nick Caserio mentioned To'o unsolicited, talking about his intelligence before snaps and stuff. So I think in a perfect world, Henry To'o beats out Christian Kirksey. But as far as Christian Kirksey still being here, I'm not quite sure. There's no way they put in that film and were like overly thrilled with it. But we'll see what happens, and we'll see how he looks. Maybe he's a good resource for the young guys. But you definitely got to get better than what you got from him. 119 says, you have been there in the middle of it. How to get leadership piece of cap is nobody has approached that since. All right. Gotcha. Adrian asked, important question. Are they going to hire another boombox guy? Well, I'll mark this one and we'll get into this at the end. That was a weird thing. I got 4 questions marked. So if the questions aren't topical, I'll get to them at the end of the show, I promise. Texas Star, that is an X-rated cat pick, by the way. Sting over Sauce. He's got the body right and physical gifts, not hindered by injuries. He's him. We shall see. We shall Let's see. We got Kirko jokes coming through as well. Next question. We're getting into the top 5. So number 10 was, how does Davis Mills look compared to CJ Stroud? How much does it matter? A little bit, and it is going to be a talking point. It's kind of a measurement, but a lot depends if you believe this is a real competition or not. Number 9, where are the best quotes going to come from? Maybe that's just me caring more about stuff than y'all do, but I doubt it. 8, how does the wide receiver depth shape up? That one's going to be crazy. And that could really be a fluid situation with that's not determined at any point. That could be determined throughout the season. Hell, we could get to week 16 and not have a damn idea. Number 7, new beginning or beginning of end for third-year guys. Number 6, will this year's second-year guys do what last year's didn't? Now into the top 5. Number 5, how will the new offensive weapons look? There's a lot of them. We can start on the offensive line. Center, Juice Scruggs. I know that's not considered a weapon, but Juice Scruggs, they traded up for him. They need an upgrade at center. They know that. It was one of the big needs heading in. How is that going to look? How's the interior offensive line going to look? I know Kenyon Green's not new, but good play from Kenyon Green would be new. How's Shaq Mason look? You traded for him, never been in this system, gave him a contract, so better be good. Dalton Schultz. How's Dalton Schultz going to look? How is Andrew Beck going to look with that tight end depth? Wide receiver, you got John Mechie, who's, I guess you can consider him a first-year guy. You got Tank Dell, you got Xavier Hutchinson, you got Robert Woods. You got a lot of new weapons. You got Devin Singletary. How are these offensive weapons going to look? How is Bobby Slowick going to use these guys? That's a lot of new faces on that side of the rock. And oh, by the way, you got a new offensive coordinator. So we will see how that whole thing goes there. So how will the offensive weapons look is number 5. Number 4, question 4. Will look like the top player on the board? Will Anderson. He was the top player on the Texans board. I think we've established that. How will he look? Will all this hype that we hear, DeMeco Ryans gushing about him, Nick Caserio talking about we're going to use him everywhere, is Will Anderson going to look like the top player on the board? Is he going to look like a guy that you wanted to package up so that you could get him and CJ Stroud and trade everything that you did? Is he going to be a guy that makes an immediate impact like Aiden Hutchinson did last year? That's what you would hope for when you're drafted at that point and you have a defensive coach and you've improved depth. Will look like Will see what I did there? Will he look like the top player on the board? Will he look top player on the board worthy? Will the favorite to win Defensive Rookie of the Year look like a Defensive Rookie of the Year? Already, we'll talk about Will the way we talk about Hutchinson this year. I think you're right. I agree. I will say, like, all this talk that we have about, quarterbacks and Bryce and CJ and should they have done this and should they have done that and who should they have taken? I think 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the decision that we look at as the dumbest of the dumb in this division when it comes to draft picks is going to be the Jaguars getting cute and taking Travon Walker instead of Aiden Hutchinson. I think if Jacksonville right now had Aiden Hutchinson, I think there's a chance that we're talking about a situation where I don't know that they could be beat in the division for a while, because I think Aiden Hutchinson's going to end up being in that Bosa mold. I do. Is Will Anderson going to get there? Don't know. There's a lot of hope, but I think Aiden Hutchinson is going to end up being in that Nick Bosa type of mold, and I don't think Travon Walker is going to be. I think Travon Walker is going to show flashes, but I don't think he's going to be that elite, all-pro caliber, Pro Bowl caliber guy. So I think that that's going to be the move. Like, no matter what happens with the Texans, where we look back and say, damn, that was dumb. A lot of people were saying that immediately. They overthought that. Still high hopes, but I don't know how you I don't know how you get to I don't know how you get to that point, to where you don't take Aiden Hutchinson. I think that was idiotic. Number 3 question. What does Bobby's world look like? This offensive system there's really not like one way that it looks. Like the old offensive system the Texans ran, the Patriots bullcrap, the Patriots way, you could kind of figure out what it's going to look like, with a few exceptions where they change it up every once in a while. But for the most part, you had a pretty good idea. This Shanahan, Kubiak, McVay system, it can look different in many different places. And a lot of times it's really just going to be about adjusting to your personnel. That's what the good coaches are going to do. Mike McDaniel, he has fast ass receivers, so they're throwing the rock a lot. And they like to run the ball as well. Kyle Shanahan, when he was in Washington, he was using RG3 a certain way. When he was in Atlanta, he used Matt Ryan a certain way. When he had Manziel and Hoyer in Cleveland, he used them a certain way. He used Garoppolo different than he used Trey Lance. He used Brock Purdy different than that. So really, it's going to be about adjustments. But what does Bobby's world look like? Never called plays, never been an offensive coordinator, but he is one of those guys who I think even Trent Williams talked about. He was a valuable resource. So he's not one of those guys that's just sitting there as an OC. Calling plays is not the end all be all. It's really just a matter of what you do and how much you're doing. And a lot of times you can't tell till like how capable they are till you see it. Mike Kafka would be the ideal example. And I think if Bobby Slowick can do what Mike Kafka did last year, which is leave an innovative offensive guy like he did Andy Reid and like Bobby Slowick did Kyle Shanahan, and then take a bottom of the league offense to the middle, I think you're looking at something really good. And that's what Mike Kafka did last year with the Giants. Nobody thought Daniel Jones was good. Daniel Jones played. He had the season of his career. I think the Giants kind of come down to earth. I think they're going to be kind of a victim of their own success when it comes to expectations. But Mike Kafka, he proved that, he was capable, and Brian Dable gave him the keys immediately. And that's what DeMeco Ryans is going to do as well. Though DeMeco's defensive, so that shouldn't be too much of a surprise. But if Bobby Slowick can do what Mike Kafka did, I think it'll be interesting. Tyler talks about wide receivers in motion. I think we will see that. They've talked a lot about that. Players have kind of let that know. So we'll see what happens with Slowick, and if he can do what Kafka did last year. I think that would be the realistic expectations. I don't think anyone in their right mind would expect, this to be some sort of like top of the league offense. Question number 2, will DeMeco Ryans call the defense? Should he call the defense? Is that too much? Can you call the defense and still, focus on all the stuff that you need to focus on? I think DeMeco is more capable of doing it than Lovie Smith was. I think Lovie Smith only knew defense. I think on offense, he was very simplistic, where you'd hear him say, we need to run the ball this percentage and we need to do this and we're going to run the ball. And he would basically lay out the offensive game plan, which, and Pep Hamilton was kind of a little bit of a disaster too. But will DeMeco Ryans call the defense? He's going to have a hand in it. Like, it's not like DeMeco Ryans is going to come up to the defensive staff and say, here you go. Y'all take care of it. I'm not going to, he's going to have a hand in it no matter what. Now, does he want to be able to focus on other things, game management, etc.? It'll be interesting to see how that's handled. But even if he doesn't call the defense, which some people think he will, I know John McClain has said that DeMeco is going to call the defense. it's not like he's just going to completely, put his hands up and say, all right, you handle this. He's a defensive guy, so he's going to have a hand in things. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. Number one question. This one's number one. We started it out asking about, Davis Mills versus CJ Stroud and the competition. I think that's kind of an undercard. I think the main question is, when will CJ Stroud be announced as the starter? I think the most important competition and the main event when it comes to QB competitions in camp, it is going to be CJ Stroud versus CJ Stroud. What does he look like? How does he progress? When he has bad days, how does he follow those bad days up? In the joint practices, how does he look? In preseason, how's he handling things logistically? How's the communication between him and Bobby Slowick? I don't think it's a matter of if, although stranger things have happened, but it's more so a matter of when. When will CJ Stroud be announced as the starter? I would think probably August 20th. If I had to guess, like if you gave me like an over-under, the joint practices with Miami are August 16th. I'd say probably August 20th, August 21st would be when I would think it would happen. Maybe the week after that. They don't have to play until the second week of September. But when is it going to happen? I think it appears to be inevitable that CJ is going to be the guy. I think they're going to be measuring him against himself. But we'll see. When will CJ Stroud be announced as starter? So the questions reset. 10 biggest questions. How will Davis Mills look compared to Stroud? Where are the best quotes coming from? How does the wide receiver depth shape up? New beginning or beginning of end for third-year guys? Will this year's second-year guys do what last year's didn't? How will the new offensive weapons look? Will look like the top player on the Texans board? Will he look worthy of that? What does Bobby's world look like? Will DeMeco Ryans call the defense? And when will CJ Stroud be announced as the starter? Did I miss any? Did I leave any out? Go ahead and comment while you're at it. Subscribe, like, right along. Locker Room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. Best coverage you can get. Most in-depth, most in the mix, informative, entertaining Texans content that you can get. Maybe I'm a little biased, but I think you will agree if you ride along. Other stuff that happened around the NFL, and I'll get to some of these comments that I didn't get to during the stream as well. But other news around the NFL, DeAndre Hopkins, he signs a 2-year deal with the Tennessee Titans. I'd never thought it made sense for the Texans to bring in DeAndre Hopkins. I never thought that they should look at it. I think they're trying to start a culture here. And a guy who doesn't practice, a guy who's probably not going to be, as patient or as happy, kind of a polarizing guy to where maybe the young quarterback would be, more focused on forcing it to him instead of spreading the ball out. I don't think that Nuke Hopkins would have been a good fit here. We talked about it before, and that did not change. I think the market kind of spoke to him. Feel bad for him about the timing. Probably could have gotten more money on the market, but it was clear there weren't a lot of teams that were interested. And if they wanted to clear cap space to bring in DeAndre Hopkins, I think they would have tried a little bit harder. But I just don't think that DeAndre Hopkins was a good fit here. I don't think he's elite still. Some people do. I keep hearing about like how many yards he would have had last year with Arizona. I mean, when they're forcing you to rock and it's a lose-lose situation, and I don't look at, he would have been on pace for this many yards. He's also going to be on a run first team in Tennessee. Now from Tennessee, I think it's a good signing. They're in a low ceiling, mediocre win now mode where Ryan Tannehill's in his last year. Derrick Henry, who knows what the hell is going to happen with him. And quite frankly, they don't have a lot of talent at wide receiver, don't really have a lot of young guys, and they have an established culture. Tennessee is a team that the last few years they've been competing right atop the division, probably would have won it last year had Tannehill not gotten hurt. So if a guy wants to come in there and not practice and just be ready on Wednesday or just be ready on Sunday, more power to him. I just don't think that really fits with where the Texans are right now. But for Tennessee, yeah, more power to him. I think that's a good signing. Now, is he going to go there and die like Randy Moss, Andre, and Julio Jones did? I don't know. I think this is closer to the Julio Jones thing. I think he probably has a little bit more ball, but we're talking about a guy who's had his 2 worst seasons the last couple of years. So we'll see what happens with Nuke, but I don't think this is like something that the Texans should have been in on. Never thought that at all. Adrian asks, anyone you still think we could sign or will sign before camp? I think they're pretty set. Now, there'll be some guys that they'll bring in for workouts, like low-level guys. But I think as far as that, I think the Texans are pretty set when it comes to before camp. I don't see them going with any big names there. So we'll see what happens. Jerome, what up, JK? How can we say if Tannehill didn't get hurt, Tennessee would have won, but don't say if Hopkins wasn't suspended, he wouldn't have got 1,400 yards. I'm not saying he wouldn't have got 1,400 yards. I'm just saying, what does that mean on a crappy team with a quarterback forcing you to rock? I don't put a lot of stock in 14. He would have gotten 1,400 yards. I think there's a lot of assumption there. I'm saying it doesn't matter whether he would or would not have in that situation, especially when you look at the target share and all that. As far as the Tannehill thing, they went 500 with him, and I think they went 0-5 without him. And they had Malik Willis out there. I don't even think that there were halves where they didn't even throw the ball with Malik Willis. So I don't think it's like far-fetched at all. I just think it's kind of easy to see that they would have won the division had Tannehill not gotten hurt. But we'll see what happens with Nuke. I guess my overall point was I don't think it was like a big deal whether he would have had 1,400 or not. And I think it's a way bigger assumption than saying Tennessee would have won the division. Nuke says he'll retire when he doesn't break 1,000 yards receiving, which I think is weird because I think he could be a productive player in Tennessee and not have 1,000 yards, especially with them wanting to run the ball a little bit more. So I don't know why he would even say that. I don't know why that matters. I think Nuke could go out there and ball without getting 1,000 yards. Adrian says nothing but love for D-Hop, but I am wishing him success. I am not wishing him success since he signed in the division. Yeah, I think that's probably the right approach. And I think most people would say that. Steven says Arizona Cardinals is trash with injury-prone QB like Kyler Murray. Yeah, but Nuke's always been quarterback proof. Going back to when he was elite, it really didn't matter who was throwing him the rock. But yeah, they did have injury-prone QBs. I would say Kyler was pretty good with him. But yeah, he was out of the lineup, but he was getting force-fed a lot, which is not going to happen in Tennessee. I think the target share will be high. Maybe he'll get close to a third of the targets, but the target share is probably going to be like overall a little bit lower than it was with the Cardinals. Other Texans news before I get to the other comments. CJ Stroud Madden rating is out. He's a 73 overall. He did not seem too thrilled with that. I think that's about right. 73 for a rookie. That's not terrible. I do wonder what Will Anderson's going to be. I think he's going to be in the 80s. I think it could be like an 80, 81. I know it's hard for rookies to get in the 80s. I think someone told me on Twitter that Quinnen Williams was like an 80, and he was drafted around, the same time that Will was. I think he was 2 or 3. But I think they put Will at 80. But yeah, CJ at 73. That seems fair. I know he doesn't like it. I know he probably wanted like 76 or something, but 73. Players care about this, man. that Madden rating stuff is wild with how players react to it. But that's what CJ got, the 7-3. And he did not seem happy about that. William asks, "Hey Landry, remember when you said the Texans were never getting CJ Stroud? You getting bad intel?" I look at the time. I'll just say this: CJ Stroud didn't think that he was going to be drafted by the Texans, and I think at the time I said, I think it was 2 weeks before the draft. I don't think they thought they were doing it either. They kind of made it seem like the decision came up, kind of last minute. But I'll just say, like, I didn't like just randomly pull that out of nowhere. I think that it's people pretty close to CJ didn't think that they were taking him either. It was seemed like a foregone conclusion it was going to be Will, and they ended up with Will Anderson. J Rock thinks the 73 is too damn low though. Could have made it at least a 75. That's probably what he was shooting for. No doubt about that. Adrian says there's an important question. Don't oversell it, my friend. Are they going to hire another boombox guy? You're talking about Nick Cray, the chief of staff for the 49ers. He was with the Texans for a couple of months. The guy who carried the boombox. I don't know what happened there. It was always kind of a weird vibe with Nick Cray. Seemed like a good dude. Always was eating good in H-Town. He definitely maxed it. Always at like the nicest steakhouses. I know he bought a house, I guess, had like a lot of stuff going on there. I really don't know what the hell went on there. I know Aaron Wilson was the one who broke the story that he wasn't coming back. I wonder why. Didn't hear anything about it. Wasn't like a huge deal, but I remember when they hired the boombox guy. I think I actually did it. I did a video like, who is Nick Cray? And it just seemed like kind of one of those swagger things. So something weird had to have happened. I don't know. I mean, did he just decide he didn't want to be here? Is he going to go back to San Francisco? Who knows? Maybe it was too hot for him. But I don't know. I doubt they're going to, I don't think they were ever going to do the boombox thing, but yeah, who knows? Who do the preseason reps go to at quarterback? Everybody gets them. I mean, everybody. I'm sure that they're going to split up first team reps in some way, shape, or form in camp. And then as far as the preseason, we'll see what happens with that. Joe Blue saying one too many drinks. Is that the Nick Cray prediction there? I don't know. One too many drinks, huh? But yeah, I think those are going to be spread out. K89 taking us inside them pockets. 10-1 odds for the Texans to win the division. I'm throwing a minimum of 100 on it. 10-7 people watch. Okay. I actually made a bet with John McClain. I bet him. I've already taken $100 from John McClain twice the last year, which I like taking rich people's money. But I bet him that Pierce wouldn't have 1,000 last year. Actually felt kind of guilty about taking that 100. Told him he could keep the money, but he's a man of his word, so he gave it to me. And then told him that Hendon Hooker wasn't going to go first round. So he gave me another hundo there. But I bet him just because if you look at like the way the NFL is, and I think the Jags schedule is kind of jacked up, especially without their left tackle for 4 weeks, going to London for 2 weeks. I feel like they're a little bit overvalued with the win-loss total in comparison to the other teams in the division. I actually took the field, and John McClain took the Jags. So I bet John McClain $100. So I got Texans, Titans, and Colts. And he's got the Jags. So we'll see how that goes. Joe Blue asks, he says, this is a statement going to follow Gonzalez, JSN, and Porter Jr. Both were in the Texans range that they wouldn't have done that great. Yeah. Y'all know how I was about Jackson Smith and Jigba. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. CJ Stroud is going to be linked to Anthony Richardson. And then you can also, add 33 there because you could have had Will Anderson, then you could add 12 and 33. So yeah, I think that's fair to do that. I think connecting those dots, I don't think it's a reach. And those were the discussions that we were having. So yeah, I think you should follow that. 115, question number 11. Give me another one. How many more Texans clients will AW hook up with David Mulugheta? Will he be negotiating those deals for athletes for asking for a friend? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know how to answer that. I guess is that AW hook up with David Mulugheta? Will he be negotiating those deals or will athletes first? There is a lot of tagging going on in those posts, huh? Tyler Olson, am I crazy for thinking that deal could be tradable and he could be moved by the deadline depending on this season? You're talking about DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think they're going to trade him during the season. I don't really see that happening. Tyler Olson, does Steven Nelson play every second of preseason? I would play him every second. He's playing 4 quarters in 3 preseason games at this point, especially if Shaq Griffin looks good. I'm going to make a statement if I'm the coach. You're staying out there for 4 quarters, brother. Grime time. But no, I don't know. Maybe Steven Nelson comes in and nothing happened. He seems to be kind of getting out of a mental funk if you follow him on social media, which I thought the whole thing was kind of weird. But it seems like Steven Nelson went into some sort of weird ass mindset or something. I don't know. He's an interesting guy. So we'll see how that whole thing works out. He's got some guys carrying his water though, which I do think is interesting. There's a lot of water carrying that kind of goes on if you guys kind of follow stuff. So sometimes you just got to be able to look, through it. But Steven Nelson, maybe he just comes in and has another good season and does what you would expect someone that makes that amount of money, that would make that amount of money on the open market to do. Just play ball and play good ball like he did last year. I said good, not great. And I didn't say overperform contract. Notice that. Will Mills play at the first preseason game or CJ? I don't know how they're going to attack that, especially with the joint practices. That'll be interesting to see how they determine that type of thing. But I appreciate everyone for coming through. 10 days away from training camp. I can't wait. Been a lot of stuff going on, obviously. But pretty soon it's gonna be that time. And we will be on the field, the radio show. So download the Odyssey app, Sports Radio 610. We will be interviewing players. Players will be coming on this stream as well. And we're in the mix. And shout out to all the other people putting out Texans content. I still think this is the best source of daily Texans digital content and some of the best stuff that you can get around the country. But there's a lot of people doing their thing on here. So spread the love because it's getting a lot more fun. And there's a lot more people that are wanting to cover this squad. So appreciate you for coming through. Subscribe, like, ride along, no matter what happens when it comes to this Texan stuff. We are all in this together. Have a good one. 10 days, baby. Be on the lookout for a new video tomorrow. It's been the Locker Room. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Have a good one.
What we about to do, localize every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days, opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up, we number 1. You don't need to try your luck.